I'm in here today from Ontario, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our story. We started with the Ride Amigos platform in September, and I want to just tell you where we were when we started and a little bit of a cheat sheet to help anyone else that might be going through any difficulties or any assistance that we could have used. Okay, so first of all, if you want to follow along on this cheat sheet, the easiest way to get there is to go to the Ride Amigos Academy. And if you're already a member, you have to be a member. You go to docs.rideamigos.com, and then there's a little search bar, and you can type in cheat sheet, and you will find the sheet that you can see up on the screen. But don't worry, you don't have to, because I'm going to go through it. So first of all, we're up here in Canada, and if you don't know where Toronto is, it's just north of Buffalo. And we are a provincial organization or a state organization where we fund 13 different TMAs in our region. So those are Transportation Management Associations, which represents about 45 staff. We work directly with 334 different employers of varying sizes, but most of them very large employers. And that represents over 700,000 individual commuters. So we have a pretty big program up here. We were using an old platform to help people match their rides, and we moved to the Ride Amigos platform just recently. And there were a few things in retrospect that I wish that I had known, and with the help of Evan, and of course with Grant, but Grant's been really helpful through the process. But Evan and I decided to make a cheat sheet that will help anyone else that's going through a transition phase of the major things that we felt that we needed to know. So if you take a look at the document, let me just pull up. All right. So first of all, we're going to talk about your technology check. So we work with a bunch of businesses, and our story might be different from your story, but our story told us that about 5 to 6% of internet users are using old, incompatible browsers. And we thought about that, made a business decision that 5 to 6% are just going to have to upgrade their browsers if they're going to use our new system. Now keep in mind, the old system had 15,000 active users, and we wanted to make sure that most of those users were well accommodated for during transition. Turns out that the 5 to 6% didn't quite represent our users, because our users are large corporate offices, and at times it takes a long time for those offices to make changes to new browsers. They have applications set up that are reliant on older versions of Internet Explorer. So for us, it was more of a 20 to 30% issue, which is huge. So we needed to have known that in advance. So we were basing that a lot on industry standard intelligence and information. So before launch, you should be trying to get those, in our case, 20 to 30% to upgrade their browsers. Third on the list here, we were able to create a system that worked for old Internet Explorer that didn't have all the bells and whistles of the Ride Amigos platform, but some things are missing. We don't have all of the really cool modules that are available on our older browser system. So we have to make sure that if we are communicating to those accounts that are using old browsers, that we're telling them, this is the stuff that you're missing out on, you better update. And I think you probably all have heard that Microsoft is going to stop supporting a browser in general. This is sort of the rumor from the rumor mill. So we'd all better start considering that when we do new applications. So next up, we're going to talk a little bit about data check. We have, like I said before, we have over 300 separate accounts, and those separate accounts through those 13 different offices used metrics differently. So in many cases, there was an issue of, well, we used to report on this metric, so how are you going to use the new system to report on the same metric? And in many cases, our old system and the new system tracks things differently. And we like the way the new system tracks, but in many ways it's not apples to apples. So part of this cheat sheet is explaining to you, you really had better make sure you understand what are the critical pieces and educating your user base on how things are different and why the new system is still valuable. We also, we had to transfer a lot of information, like I said, 15,000 users from the old system to the new. And in not all ways did they transfer in a seamless way. In some cases, there were network names that were missing. In some cases, we had permission levels that were expected for network managers that they weren't receiving anymore. So I think it's really important that when you're looking at the data that's going into the new system, that you fill in all the holes and gaps. And there's a lot, so it's really easy to misplace some of that stuff. So under user, trip, and network data, let me just pull this down a bit. Oh. Okay. Anyway, well, moving on. I think it's because I have this highlighter set up. Hold on. Okay. All right. So under the user, trip, and network data, make sure that you understand completely what the user is going to see. For example, we transferred our networks over, so that was over 300 networks, but we didn't realize that you could add a blurb about that network with a little message to the user. We didn't have that in our old system, so we didn't have a CSV that was really quick and easy to insert that. So for our 330 odd networks, the word undefined came up to the user. So they didn't understand what undefined meant. I didn't understand what undefined meant. So that was one little piece that it would have been good if you knew that. So make sure that you check what your old system had and what the new system has. Some of our existing trips in the old system were set as private. In some cases, they were public. So
breaking up a lit, Aubrey. You're breaking up a tiny bit. So just FYI, we got like a minute left.
Okay. And then we'll move on to step 3. Make sure that the user experience, you really understand it and you include that in all of your communications. So we're dependent on what is available when it comes to the transit data feed. And a lot of people say, why doesn't it go from A to B the way I expect it to? Well, you have to communicate very clearly, well, this is the information we have from our data feed. When it comes to biking and walking data, we currently use OpenStreetMap, and that's something that users can improve upon. So we have set up a campaign, and we're going to consider this in the future as well, campaigns to get users to improve the OSM data set, because again, we're dependent on those data sets. Just a couple more things before I end. I think we're all experiencing that the opt-in nature rather than the opt-out nature of hosting a trip on the system can be tricky because we went from an opt-out process. Every user who was on our old system, the 15,000, were required to post their trip. In the new system, people go in there, shop around, and they may never post their own trip. So this is something that we need to work around. So that's another key piece we should have thought about in the messaging in the system. So under step 4, on the communication step, communicate as early as possible. We definitely were struggling in the end because we wanted to ensure that our system was up and online by a certain date, and we left some behind. We also we transferred a number of users to the new system, and that it means that we're experiencing users out in the old system that aren't using the new one. We have about 20,000 users on our Rodney platform, but over 10,000 of those are users who transferred over and haven't used it. Maybe they're already just on their commute. So when it comes to our major messaging and getting the word out there, I think it's really important to do that stuff. And so finally, you can check out our system at explore.smartcommute.ca and check around. In there, you'll also see our frequently asked questions document, which I think is another really important thing to have as a primary piece of your launch. So that is it. We really thought it was important to communicate some of our lessons learned, and also we wanted to help to populate on the Radamigos Academy document platform. And I think more of the Radamigos users can talk about their experiences and create content for that resource. So thank you for setting up.